Hello, my name is Alex, now Valensuela, because of this Mexican right here. I'm Bulgarian. I was born in Sofia, but I spent the majority of my time in Bulgaria in Plovdiv, so essentially I'm a Plovdivčanka. I play the piano. That's what I started doing when I was 4. And at 15, I moved to the UK to continue pursuing this in a boarding school. Ever since, I have not developed many hobbies because that was super time consuming, but I do love actually going to the mountains, going for walks, for hikes. I'm not a planinarka, but I enjoy shopping. He said shopping. I do love shopping. That is a hobby. I'm spending the family budget, but I'm learning how to manage it better. I like fashion.
You gotta look good.
Yeah, gotta look good. You gotta have the drip on. I like fashion. I also just love specialty coffee and going to really good coffee shops with the highest end coffee. That's something we should. Yeah, and decorating. And I love decorating our home. So that's me. Yeah. I'm 25 years old. I didn't say that.
So, my name is Ernesto Valensuela. I'm 25 years old and I'm from Tucson, Arizona, which is bordering Mexico. I'm Mexican-American. My parents were born in Mexico. Before, I lived in Bulgaria, because now I live in Sofia, Bulgaria. I lived in Ireland for about 3 years. And then when I was living in Ireland, I met my now wife, Alex Valenciuela, and decided to move to Sofia, Bulgaria. Ever since I was 12 years old was when I started music. And I currently do music with most of my time. And the other time to provide as the man of the house. I'm a freelance construction worker, so I do absolutely everything, and it's a big passion of mine.
Building our apartment.
And building and renovating our apartment right now, detail by detail. And hobbies for me is relationships with my friends. I love spending time with my friends, and especially those who I make music with, and just having memorable moments. Because I think that's one of my biggest things, is creating nice, memorable moments with friends that I didn't maybe have when I was a kid. And what's another hobby of mine?
Bowling.
I love bowling. Yes,
you took us to bowling for your 25th birthday.
Yeah. Bowling is one. And man, I like doing a lot of things, but that's pretty it. Music, bowling, hanging out with my wife, and yeah. So
the story of how we met, it's a very long one. We can spend like 2 days telling it if we have to go on all the details. But we do get the question a lot, how did a Mexican-American and a Bulgarian meet and then live in Bulgaria? Because I was living in England, in the UK, and he was living in Northern Ireland. So it was 2020, the end of 2020, and I was living in isolation like everyone else with my best friend in an apartment, and he was living in Northern Ireland as a missionary.
Because of COVID-19.
Because of COVID-19. And then a very good friend from school of mine moved to Ireland, and via music she met Ernesto, and then contacted my best friend who I was living with to join a morning Zoom call from the church that Ernesto was serving at. So there was like Zoom morning devotional calls so that the community of the church he was serving at could keep in contact during isolation. So they would meet every morning at 11, and we got invited to hop on that Zoom call, and that's when I first saw him. I didn't think anything except like, okay, interesting Mexican in Northern Ireland with a bunch of old people. But in like a week or two after going every morning and just speaking to everyone, not personally, I got really curious because I heard a little bit about his story, that he came from Mexico, he had a really tough background, and suddenly he's this big believer, Christian, serving old people in Northern Ireland. So I was like, I need to know more about this guy. So I Instagrammed him, I found him, and I commented on one of his guitar videos because he was also a musician. So that was something that I was like, ooh, interesting. And he responded immediately. We started talking about music. We started talking about life in general. From texting, it went to voice messages. From voice messages, we called that same night for like 5 hours on FaceTime for the first time alone. And within those few hours of speaking, it was just like, this is so different to anything else that either of us have experienced before. For me, the communication with him was so easy and so natural, and I felt so understood and so seen and appreciated for the way I am, naturally. And I didn't beat about the bush. I literally went straight for it. I was like, look, I'm gonna be honest. There's things about you that I really like that are on my checklist, like the really core importance checklist. And if we're gonna keep talking, then I need to know kind of where you stand. He had asked me already what I want in my life, what my biggest dreams are. And I said, honestly, I don't know career-wise or anything, but I know I wanna have a family and I wanna get married young and build my life with someone and create a legacy. And that's where he kind of responded. He was like, I also feel the same way. I've always wanted to get married young, to have my own family, to build something with someone that's gonna last. So we were on the same page from that first conversation, which made it reassuring that we're not just gonna talk and flirt and then no one really knows what's happening. So he said he also wants to get married young and that he's never met such a bold woman like me that would say like this, that you'll like a guy after a few hours. I was like, I know what I want, I know what I like, so if you feel the same way, then we can keep talking. If not, there's no point. So that was kind of the beginning of the relationship, and then we spent 2 months on FaceTime every day because we couldn't travel, even though we live 45 minutes by plane from London to Northern Ireland. It was obviously forbidden, so we would just talk and talk every day for hours. And the relationship really progressed very fast because we had clarity of where we were going and what we were aiming at. Yeah. It was not just, let's see what happens. It was more like, okay, you want to get married, I want to get married. We have common goals, desires, interests. Now it's just a matter of developing that relationship and that friendship. Yeah. So yeah. So
22, when I got married, I would have gotten married younger if I had the opportunity. I grew up in a broken home and I got like taken away from my parents when I was young. So like I experienced the bad version of marriage. And so I knew like, I knew the things I wanted to do in life, like things I'm super passionate about. I was like, I know I love music and I'm gonna give it my best. And I was like, I can't do anything else. Like I want my family. I want my own family. I want to, cherish my wife, cherish my kids. And I was like, cause I know like that is going to be the best investment, like that I'll have like on this earth, like that will actually last some time. So before I met Alex, there was, some possible relationships, but there was in a sense like, all right, maybe these people aren't the one for me. And so I had kind of let go the idea to get married, and in a sense, miraculously, God brought her into my life, and it was almost lined up the perfect time for us to meet. And literally within the first week, I asked myself this crazy question. I was like, I think I'm standing in front, like obviously via Zoom, in front of my future wife. And I was like, yeah, this might be it. Not that I needed to get married to like do everything that I wanted, but I knew this was the most important thing for me and for my future and for our future was to invest in this, because I think good marriages and having two people that will really love each other is such a testimony to the world, that this marriage thing does work and that the family is like core to our society. So we got married from the first day that we met to the day we got married was 9 months, right?
Yeah.
9 months.
9 months. And plot twist.
What?
We only saw each other once before that in person.
Yeah, we only met once in person.
Because the story goes like this. We spoke on Zoom for 2 months. We already knew that this was it because we communicated. We're like, we already expressed the desire to marry each other. He couldn't stay in Ireland any longer. He had to move back to America. And we still hadn't seen each other in person. We had only spoken via our phones. So we devised a plan to at least meet each other once, because once he goes to America, it's going to be much more difficult to travel. So he flew into London 2 days earlier before his flight to America. And we met at the airport in an airport hotel for 2 days during like the pandemic when there was no one. And that's the first time we saw each other. It was crazy. And it was like, this is it. We're gonna do it. And 5 months later, he flew into Bulgaria, I flew into Bulgaria, and we got married. So we saw each other once. I got the ring the second time when he arrived in Sofia. So.
Yes. I think interracial marriages are actually an extra obstacle course. Actually, it adds to the difficulty in a sense, because we do come from completely different ways of living, even from what you eat.
But at the same time, I think it's a good test for how to improve your communication even more and how to be more humble, how to be more understanding and empathetic, because there's a lot of times when I don't really understand where he's coming from in his reactions or his desires, or, I mean, it's obviously cultural, but then it's also individual. Your family is part of a culture, but it has its own culture. So it's very dense and dynamic because you see how much of your world I don't understand. But at the same time, that opens an opportunity to actually humble myself and to come into a conversation where you can share and actually fully share something that I can maybe taste a little bit of, but it makes us closer. And then eventually when I go and see where you're from and all of that, I think a lot of blanks are going to be filled in. You
got to become a student of each other's culture. Like when I came to Bulgaria, I didn't come like a Mexican American. I came as, I'm Ernesto Valensuela and I'm here just to learn. I'm learning your culture. That's it. And the Bulgarian culture is impeccable. When you come across an issue, never look at it as this is the end of something. It's the beginning, actually, when you come across an issue and you can grow stronger.
Again, together. If you're humble enough to actually put yourself lower and want to understand.
Yeah.
It's hard, but honestly, communicating and cooling down when you need to cool down, that is something we're learning right now. Sometimes even having to leave the room, saying how long you're leaving for, just to cool down. I'd say really give yourself a tiny bit of distance, think, pray for a sec, like remember why you love the person. That's something I'm learning now.
I am not your enemy, I'm your friend.
Yes, see, I still can't remember that. In those moments, I'm like, why you treat me like this?
There's a lot of things that can be resolved instantly, but then your emotions get all over the place, and so I remind her, I'm not your enemy. Like,
it's just you gotta change perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Get behind the perspective of I'm not your enemy, then stay and think for a bit, like why you love that person, the fact that they love you, because otherwise you're just super focused on that one situation. And it sounds super rational to, see the bigger picture, but in that moment all you see is just, you annoy me, you hurt me, you don't get it, you're just stupid, like plain stupid sometimes. But then you realize it's not like that, it's just your emotion, so you gotta just stand behind a different perspective and see things differently. One other thing is giving the other person time for themselves. Like, we're always busy, we have work, and then you make meetings with friends, and then you come home like late at night and you see each other for maybe 2-3 hours, and then you repeat the same process. So a lot of communication gets lost in translation a lot with the time, especially because we're young and we need time to be ourselves in our own space without having to mold ourselves to someone else. Yeah, because we have busy seasons of life sometimes. Sometimes are more busy and sometimes are slow. So I think giving the other person space to just be themselves without me getting into her stuff or her getting into my stuff, because we need personal space sometimes to be able to think and to do stuff. Because when sometimes we're arguing, I actually don't know how I feel because I'm so clouded with emotion. I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know exactly where all of this. So I just react. So it's best, I just have some time alone to be able to think. So that there's no expectation of like every day we need to communicate super intensely. I think, again, when you come home, you got to communicate first. Okay, there's certain things we have to talk through, just logistically, for example, what we need to do tomorrow, some issues, some planning. But then we should not have the expectation of every day we need to spend super intense quality time together. But also hearing the other person's opinion, because that day specifically, they might want to spend and need like intense time together. We've learned a lot, because she took life super seriously and I took life super nonchalantly. It's fine, everything's good. We'll see how it goes. And it's like there's good and bad things on both sides. So I think one big thing is don't take everything so seriously. Or so not seriously. But more, don't take it as seriously, because at the end of the day, you're not each other's enemy. You're each other's friend. And you're each other's teammate, so. And also we've been married 2 years. We didn't say that earlier. Yeah, we've been married for 2 years. 2 godini. Known each other almost 3. You let reality slap you. And you take it as many times as it needs to slap you till you actually realize that everything people have told you about expectations and this idea of, you go into a relationship to receive. Obviously, you go into a relationship to receive because when the other person loves you, they want to give. But it's a different kind of sense of entitlement when you go and every day is about your exact expectations for that day and they need to be met, otherwise the person has failed. It's very hard. I struggle with expectations in every area of my life because I'm a very high achiever and I plan, I give my best, so I expect everyone to give their best. And as I said, I see things mostly through my perspective, and I think it's the best. So it's hard if someone else's perspective of meeting expectations just differs. So really, reality checks and slaps and just sitting and contemplating again from a different perspective whether my expectations are realistic, are they loving, why are they there in the first place? I recommend therapy. Here's the place where I recommend therapy. Personal. We still haven't done couples therapy, but we did premarital counseling. But we've both done therapy on our own. I'm still doing some. I think that's super essential, again, to know who you are, why you are the way you are, and where you want to go and how you want to be. So that has helped a lot because I've uncovered a lot of my default reactions to when I'm disappointed. Because with expectations, disappointment holds it by the hand. Like, they're two best buddies and I live in them very often. But I just see how it ruins every nice spontaneous moment you might have and every moment that is not as special as you'd imagined it. It takes it away and it makes the other person feel like they're not good enough. So when you also see things from that perspective, that you're hurting them and you're making them feel less than, that kind of humbles you again a little bit. But it's a very slow work in progress. So for those people who are more like me, who struggle with expectations and with constantly wanting the best, like you gotta go for it, do the hard work and do therapy for sure. So that's all I have to say.